All right, welcome everybody to this week's episode of the Law Weekly Roundtable. I'm Hunter Lee, and I'm joined by Spellsy here in studio.
Good morning.
And Travis in Singapore. How is Singapore, Travis?
Singapore is way cooler than I thought it would be. I've been really enjoying it. I don't know. By the way, there's the most expensive building in the world here. I was on top of it. There's literally a boat that sits on top of 3 different towers. Just nothing makes sense here, but it's really cool.
Great. And you got in on Monday, so you've had a couple days there before the games start this weekend?
Yeah, actually my flight got delayed by like 7 hours or something, so technically I got in at like 3:30 in the morning on Tuesday, but yeah, no, I've been here and I've seen, it was really cool this morning. I saw all of the players at the hotel, like LMQ and Fnatic and all those guys. It's really cool to see a lot of the familiar faces.
All right, and we may have some technical difficulties since we, again, might have you on a slight satellite delay from Singapore, but we'll do the best that we can. So we're in between the 2 group stages. Groups A and B finished up. Groups C and D start this weekend. Travis, you were on location for Groups A and B. What really stood out to you this weekend?
Well, the funniest thing to me was seeing, I say funny, the most interesting thing, I guess, my production rig here is just not what it is at the studio. The funniest thing so far, the most interesting thing was just seeing like the SK TSM scenario play out, where SK was able to beat TSM. Did not necessarily expect that. Obviously, the Spellsy issue somewhat unexpected as well. So it's really interesting. I think he may, looking back on this season, be the player that has most single-handedly impacted the World Championships. It's interesting to see or to think about, he not gotten banned.
Yeah.
But it was just really cool. I think I haven't seen the second set of groups yet, but Samsung White looks really, really, really good. Like, by far and away the best team in that first half of teams. So, I mean, right now, I can't imagine those guys not winning Worlds. Blue is just ridiculously better, you know?
Yeah. I think, certainly you saw the best of TSM and the worst of TSM, and that was like the TSM roller coaster for sure for fans. And SK gets the Thorin asterisk next to their performance, with the Svenskeren. Svenskeren, potentially ironic MVP of TSM season, getting them to the next round. What did you think? We'll spend most of the time on TSM and SK and that, but what did you think of TSM's performance over the weekend?
I thought they were, like you said, up and down. I think it was actually interesting that we saw in the playoffs they had this kind of like adapt and like get better in the later games, and I think we saw that a little bit with them against Royal, getting crushed game 1 and then actually winning the game 2, and kind of they just improved in general. I think in their second half of games, with exception of the SK game, I guess. But yeah, I think TSM looked okay, kind of just as expected.
I think the high-quality games have really shown TSM's strengths, but also their weaknesses, which is good for them because I think it gives them a chance over this break, this sort of 2 weeks between games for them to adapt. You really see if Dyrus shows up, they have a legit team that can push at least what you might call the B or A tier teams, the kind of Royal Club, maybe EDG, that's kind of second tier down teams and really compete with those. If Dyrus doesn't show up at like that SK game, they really focused on him and shut him down. There doesn't seem to be enough left in the sort of Lust Boy, Turtle, amazing kind of support thing to really support Bjergsen enough to get TSM over the top.
The other thing that was really surprising to me was just how weak EDG was. Like, the fact that AHQ almost got past them was really surprising, and in my mind that means that like had TSM been able to place first, like those guys would have had a pretty real chance of getting to semis, which like the idea of an NA team getting to semis, like that is pretty, I mean, I think a lot of people have a hard time imagining that, or would have a couple of weeks ago. So it's just really, unfortunate for them that they weren't able to come out ahead in the groups, because I think those guys would have had bragging rights for days.
Yeah, I mean, as excited as I am about an NA team advancing, we'll still be in the place where the #1 NA seed hasn't advanced past the quarterfinals at all in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So having shifted back is fine, but they'll go out maybe against Samsung White, at the same place that TSM went out 2 years ago, and the same place that Cloud9 went out last year. Without still advancing through that next round into the semis or finals. But still. advancement. That's got to be pretty good. I don't know if it totally validates Reggie's decisions, but it's better than not advancing.
It's better than not advancing, but like they had by far the weakest group, probably easiest group to get out of. So
yeah, I'm glad AHQ really came back. It certainly looked weakness on EDG's part, but it provided a lot of drama and interest in that last day. After 3 days of kind of mostly stomps, not tremendously impressive, kind of dramatic play and competition. That last day between the 2 TSM matches, the sort of hint of maybe a third TSM match, and then the AHQ matches, it was a really exciting finish to what was a kind of dry weekend.
Yeah, I think like it kind of sucked because day 2 and day 3 were just like exhaustingly bad. Like it was just like a grind watching all of those games and just watching stomp after stomp after stomp, and I was just like questioning like, why did Riot do this? This isn't the most hype event of the year. But then like we saw day 4 and it was like really satisfying to see all those good games and the drama and kind of all play out interestingly.
And for the local fans, Travis, AHQ showed up, and that must have been pretty good. I assume the arena was losing its mind during those games.
Yeah, they were losing their mind. Speaking of the arena, it was kind of surprising to me that it was not full most of the days.
Oh, is that right? It's hard you can't tell on camera at all what the attendance looks like.
But it was pretty empty on the first couple of days, which was crazy to me because I remember seeing shots of like CLGEU playing in Taipei a couple of years ago, and just like it was packed. I think it was just because of the fact that school had recently started, but it was, I guess on Saturday night, I think it was really crazy. Sunday, there was the typhoon, which I barely survived, by the way, like as an on-the-scene journalist. I just want to, mention how dangerous and scary it is for some of us spinning our necks out there. But yeah, no, for whenever AHQ looked like they might go through, like, the audience went crazy. It was really unfortunate, I guess, for them that they weren't able to get through. But we'll have to see if EDG is able to, maybe show up in a better way.
I think most of us had EDG. If you go look EDG going into the Final Four, if we go back and look at our brackets, that's not looking as. I don't feel very confident in that prediction at this point. It shapes up well for looking ahead some to the weekend just a little. Like if Alliance is able to get first place and force itself into the lower half of the bracket. That bracket's looking a lot softer now that EDG looks so soft.
The bottom half, if Alliance could get first, looks so much weaker. But either way, it looks so much weaker because assuming Samsung Blue will get first, both Samsung teams are going to be in the top half of the bracket.
Yeah.
So
you have Nijin White Shield, and you used to say you had Nijin White Shield and EDG. Now, I don't know. If I'm EDG and China in general, I think Royal Club and EDG both looked not nearly as dominant maybe as people expected. And a big China fan would probably have to be a little nervous about their chances going forward.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see that EDG Royal Club matchup, because I think EDG, because that's who's going to play in this quarters, right? And because EDG has like the historical dominance, at least coming from like the LPL over Royal Club. But I think, at least at this tournament so far, Royal Club has looked a little bit better at execution.
Both teams come out of that weekend a little bruised, wouldn't you say, Travis?
Yeah, no, I think so. It just, like, it was just kind of surprising. Like I said at the start of the show, White just looked ridiculously ahead of everybody else, and there wasn't like and these guys are on their heels or anything like that, right? It just looks like, okay, well, the only team that has a chance of making it into the finals from that group, or from all this, is definitely White in my mind.
Yeah. All right, well, let's look ahead to this upcoming weekend. We've got Group C and D. Spellsy, give us a little intro to Group C and what you see, what are the possibilities there?
So Group C is Samsung Blue, Fnatic, OMG, and LMQ. I think Blue will be as dominant as White in that group, despite having a kind of stronger competition, arguably. No, actually, I don't think they have a stronger competition. I think Fnatic and I think OMG, my prediction is OMG is going to look really weak for a Chinese team, at least.
I mean, that sets up well for Fnatic. They've always done better than people expect at Worlds, despite coming in with kind of shaky regular season performances, not necessarily dominant in the playoffs, and yet they show up to play. Travis, what are your thoughts on Group C? I think it shapes up well for Fnatic to maybe slip out of this group, but it's hard. It is hard to say.
I don't know. It's just going to be really strange to see how that group plays out from the sort of stuff that I'm hearing from here. I mean, it's all rumors and it's all based on scrims, and you never really know how this stuff is going to be. But I don't know. it doesn't sound like there's too much strength in either one of the Western teams there.
Yeah, I do think it should be a really good group in terms of clash of styles. Fnatic always brings interesting things out. We've seen LMQ all season kind of slip into the NA meta, but still have some of the, some stuff that's special to them. And ONG and Samsung Blue, it's sort of one of our best groups so far because SK got a little off for really showing kind of your 4 major regions and how those metas collide.
Yeah.
And this past weekend was really interesting in that a reasonable amount of champion diversity, a different meta than we saw in either the NA playoffs or the EU playoffs, kind of a mishmash of everything. It was all over the place.
So like in total, there was about 50 champions played, which is higher than if you look at the same amount of games in the NA LCS split. There was only 38 champions, so there's like a sizable like 30% more. And it could be argued that that's like all this different regional diversity. I went back and looked at like the Korean regionals and the NA regionals to kind of see what picks kind of came through. And so in the NA regionals, Nunu was the most popular jungler actually, but we've only seen one Nunu pick this entire split or this entire world so far. But when you look at the Korea regionals, they prioritized Rengar and Kha'Zix and Lee Sin. Like those were like the 3 primary things which we're seeing in Worlds. And a little bit of Elise actually, but we haven't really seen much Elise.
Yeah, Travis, I think, like the World's melting pot, one thing of isolation all year and the lack of international events is that you get these regions kind of coming into each other blind and just butting heads. Scrimming probably sorts that out a little, but it was interesting to just see the kind of the clash of kind of isolated parties and what resulted from that. It did seem like...
I was just going to say, it was really interesting. I mean, we saw a lot of things, I think, that suddenly Gianna showed up.
Yeah.
And that was the big thing so far, like seeing the amount of Gianna picks that were coming into Worlds. I mean, there were some people predicting that she'd be popular. I don't know if they predicted how popular she would be in that first stage.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people were saying, oh yeah, we're going to see the rise of Janna, or we're going to see Janna, but I don't think anybody predicted her to be like the #1 support.
And drawing bans.
Yeah, like people were saying, like, because there was like Gorilla from That We'll See what brought the Janna, but then like she was never as popular as she is right now.
And Freddie never getting a chance to play Aatrox either. Like it's kind of just funny how some of the stuff works. Like I saw that Reddit thread that said how ridiculously high the Aatrox percentage was just because of him being in the tournament. It's just kind of neat to see how each of the regions forces the other ones to play, and what we see rise out of this.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
My favorite game, I think, or one of my favorite games, was actually the Royal TSM Stomp on like the first day, because it was just like the Rengar like executed so well and just like crushed them so hard. Like I don't think they...
After seeing it fail and then...
Yeah, after seeing it fail so many times, it was like so interesting to see it work, and like they're just like, I don't know, it was such flawless Rengar play. It was
compelling for sure, and then you look back and you're like, God, we suck at Rengar. Like what happened? Meteos is a good jungler, I thought.
Yeah,
like no success on Rengar, and that was a dominant Rengar performance. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so Group C, Travis, who do you have coming out of Group C?
Right now, I probably have Blue and OMG. I think I'm trying to remember what I know. Everybody at On Gamers, and by the way, people can go find it on our website, did like a predictions of how they expected all of Worlds to go. I forget what my original one was. I know I had Blue getting out of it, obviously, but based on what I'm hearing right now, I think OMG is probably the best bet. By the way, just as an aside, I'm very excited about the fact that OMG LMQ kicks everything off tomorrow, at least tomorrow for me. That'll be, I think, very exciting.
Yeah, I originally had Samsung Blue and OMG, but after seeing China not look tremendous in the first weekend, not that NA or EU looked great, I just don't feel super confident in OMG, and I think this is a Fnatic surprise. So I'm officially on record with Samsung Blue OMG, but I feel like Fnatic has a real chance to come out of this group now.
I had Blue and Fnatic. But I mean, to be honest, I think these 3 teams all look, or I feel like they're all going to be kind of weak. So it could be a toss-up, to be honest.
Yeah, certainly Korea's looked very strong. Of any of the regions living up to the hype, like Samsung White totally stomped everyone and looked really good in all their games. So no reason to doubt Blue for sure. Okay, so set us up for Group D, Spellsy.
All right, so for Group D, we have the Alliance is the #1 seed. Then we have Cloud9, Najin, and
Kaboom. Kaboom. Yeah, so are you on the Kaboom hype train for the 6-0, the dream?
Yeah. I think they will. No. I think Kaboom will just get stomped. I don't know. It's kind of sad because Dark Passage and kind of ruined Group A for me, but these groups are much more hype. I think it'll be interesting to see the Alliance Cloud9, even though I'm not really predicting Cloud9 to do that well. I think that'll be an interesting matchup, and it'll be interesting to see how Najin actually comes out in this group.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is certainly where a real test of Korea will sit, because a lot of people would consider Alliance the best in EU, and Cloud9 may be the best in NA, and Najin's not the best in Korea, so if there is a chance to kind of knock a Korean team out, this is probably it. Travis, what are you hearing on site about Group D?
Well, Najin, I mean, is undoubtedly the weakest team from Korea, as everyone has been talking. So, as you said, like, this is their chance, right? For Alliance or Cloud9 to come together, because I don't think Kaboom's going to do it and force out a Korean team. But I don't know. I have not been Cloud9, so I can't say that I have much faith in their ability to push out them. I think Alliance will go through. They've apparently been doing very well, and I don't know. I think based on everything that I'm hearing here, I think it's going to be Najin and Alliance. Though it would be great to see Cloud9 get through, because I think that I think that those guys would look really cool going into the semifinals or whatever. I just like the way that they play, and I think that would be fascinating. But again, like, Alliance is Froggen, which everybody thinks is like it's like the Western Faker, right? Like, we could send that guy out there and he's going to embarrass some Koreans and some Chinese players. So I think that that's the better bet, and I just think Najin White Shield is probably just performing better than Cloud9 right now.
Yeah, I think Alliance is, in my opinion, the top Western team. So there are, like, the West's only hope to get into semifinals or finals. We can't even say to win the tournament.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Yeah,
but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're Cloud9, this really looks more and more like a nightmare draw for them, and you've got to be kicking yourself so hard that you didn't get first place and get the relatively soft Group B and get out of there, but maybe even in first place, since that was an option for TSM. But this is, like, Cloud9, clearly they live or die with High's play in mid lane, and drawing Alliance and Najin White Shield is not. That's, like, really tough for them, because they're going to have strong mid laners who can really push High. At minimum, go even, but even, like, going one-on-one with Froggen is not anyone's, like, cup of tea. Yeah. And I think that's a really bad matchup stylistically for them. Whereas in Group B, they would have had much softer mid lanes, Jezzes and Korn, and, just had a much better chance of playing to their strengths. That particular strength to weakness matchup would have lined up so much better for Cloud9. Whereas Group D, a lot of strength at mid lane. I can't speak to Kaboom's mid laner, but a lot of strength at mid lane, which doesn't bode as well for Cloud9.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we've seen that when High doesn't do well, especially in, like, the playoffs, he kind of gets wrecked.
I think the bigger story here, Hunter, you kind of hinted on it, is will Alliance be able to get first in this group, which would be really fascinating to me. Yeah. I think that would be really neat, because if Alliance gets first in this group, like, how neat would it be to see Alliance in the finals for, like, the West, right? Like, we sent a team to the finals to get humiliated by Samsung White. It would be great, like, I'd be.
And I think that's really a real possibility. So the lower half of the bracket is really soft. You get EDG or Royal, both of those teams look beatable, assuming you can get through the first round, which I can't remember who ends up in that round. Is that the OMG Fnatic?
Yeah, whoever gets second place.
The first place team in Group D gets the second place team in Group C, so probably OMG or Fnatic. Yeah. It's certainly a winnable game for Alliance if they manage to get into first place, and then they get the winner of EDG Royal Club. Both teams also looked pretty weak. If you win both of those, you're in the finals. That's Alliance. That's the West, and Alliance is like, you've got to get first in this bracket. Much like TSM, on that last day, you were looking around and thinking, God, if they can get first place and shift to the lower half of the bracket and then get EDG, maybe there's a possibility. This is definitely where you go. And if the West somehow loses doesn't get first tier again, and you go into the Samsung meat grinder of the top half of the bracket, that's GG for all of us. So I think you're right that the possibility is there.
Yeah.
And somehow Alliance needs to scrape out, or Cloud9, but one of them needs to scrape out first place for the West and take us all the way to the finals.
And I think
what if Alliance won the whole thing? Like, let's say they get to the finals and suddenly, like, you know, like White or whoever doesn't know how to deal with them. Like, that's a pretty exciting situation.
Yeah,
like,
well, I do think, like, if you're Alliance, you think, okay, Aurelia's back in the meta for top lane. Like, this is good. We don't have to worry about Wicked at all. He can just pick that over and over and over again. Like, Froggen, Strong, and our other three, like, the meta's fine for jungle. It's an interesting meta for support. Like, this is shaping up reasonably well in a way that it's not necessarily for Cloud9, because Meteos looks a little lost in this meta. This looks like a really good meta for Alliance, so maybe the stars align. I think if they did somehow win, it throws the 3/5 compromise back in Riot's face and says, like, all right, the West is fine on its own. Like, Cloud9 did fine. You know, Alliance, look, Alliance is a final team. We don't need protection from these Korean overlords. We're going to be fine over here on our own.
Like, they could make the finals, but they would still be like the third best team or something.
Maybe,
I don't know.
you know.
But yeah, no, I think if there's any chance for a Western team to beat a Korean team in the group stage, I think it's Group D. I think I said this before, because I think Alliance is the strongest team in the West, and Najin is the weakest team out of the Korean teams. But I still predicted Najin to go first.
And you stand by that? Not going out for Alliance here?
No, although I think it's still possible. I think it's still possible.
Travis, you sticking?
Listen. Here's the thing. Our viewership on this show has not been ridiculous yet, so I feel like I can say right now, Alliance is going to win all the championships for 2014. They're going to come out the world victors, the best team in the world. And if I'm right, then I could post this video and be like, wow, Travis predicted it. Screw Monty, screw the analysts, screw everyone. Travis is a god.
Yeah.
But if I'm wrong, nobody will notice because they won't watch the show. So.
Right. Well, I mean, I think I'm not.
Alliance is going to win.
I want Alliance to win. I'll be rooting for them as hard as I've rooted for any team so far, probably. But my official pick is still, I'm pretty sure it's Najin first, and then Alliance second, and Cloud9, suffering from a really tough draw and going out in the group stages where I think they're a strong enough team to get through if things got shifted around differently. But that's just not how it worked out. So speaking of predictions on a show that aren't very well known because the show doesn't get a ton of ratings, I called Curse Piglet last week on the show, and everybody laughed at me and whatever, Curse Piglet, ha ha ha. But Do Raven broke the story today on Gamers. It's top of the subreddit as when we tape here Wednesday morning, and probably still high on the subreddit when this shit airs live Wednesday afternoon. So it's not confirmed exactly. There's an offer out there potentially. But it seems likely that he would accept.
So, yeah, do you think he'll accept?
I think he'll accept. I mean, what do I know? Piglet and I go way back. We're obviously very close friends. So, knowing him as well as I do, I'd say there's no way he can turn this down. I think this is the natural path now, and one place where Riot's new rules make sense. The natural path is for Korean stars who, for whatever reason, are falling out of favor there, can move to other regions and still be top of the heap there. And Curse is the only one of the top 4 teams that has a slot available to pick up a foreigner under the new system. They let go of their AD carry. I assume that's not a coincidence, SKT's moves and Curse's moves, and appear to have made an offer pretty quickly. You think it's a total coincidence? Maybe.
It was the same day.
That could be the plan. You're hearing rumors, you're looking around. Anyway, I think he'll accept, and we'll see, Curse potentially take a big step forward now with arguably the best bot lane, at least on paper, with a special Piglet, certainly pushing Rush Hour and some of the other bot lanes. Travis, are you excited for the next Korean overlord to arrive?
I don't know. Monty replied to the tweet that I made about the article or whatever, and he said top Lel. I don't know if that means he thinks it's very unlikely or if he just thinks the situation is hilarious, but I'm ready to believe it. I think that the opportunities to play in North America are quite lucrative for some of these top Korean teams. I mean, I don't know how much money Curse has, but I mean, they were able to pull Edward from Gambit and all that kind of thing. So I actually think there's a very good chance of this, especially if the rumors that he has not been having, or that he's not been getting offers from the foreign teams are very good, or that he's not been able to get offers. If that's true, I don't think that there's it's too far of a jump that he'll end up on Curse. I think it's really funny because there's a lot of people who just immediately, on my Twitter feed or on the Reddit thread, just completely deny the chance that this could be happening. I think there's a very, very good chance. I mean, we saw Ackerman, who was number 2 at Worlds last year, end up over in NA. I don't think it's too far of a jump to see Piglet, who was number 1 in Worlds last year and not top of the world this year, end up on Curse next year. So we'll see what happens, but I think there's a very good chance.
I think I mean, I don't know what the chances are, but I think it'll be weird if he comes, because I'm pretty sure he knows, no English. I mean, Travis could probably confirm this, because he interviewed him.
Yeah, I mean, unless he's learned a lot since Paris, he knows none. I will point out, by the way, that I did not realize how ridiculous, the lack of communication was on Royal Club.
Yeah.
Virtually nothing. That's what I thought that there was something going on there. Whatever, that was the story from me talking to the players and from everybody else who interviewed and did features. They're apparently it's mostly pings and go, 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 go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe that's a team that just shows you can be at least a top 8 team in the world by completely not understanding each other. Now,
that's why I think it's so weird that in North America we've seen a lot of blaming on communication.
Here's the thing about the communication issue, because I think it's a legitimate issue, is that now, unlike CLG's kind of move with this and TSM's move, now is the time to do this, because you have nearly a full year to sort that stuff out before NA playoffs and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if the worst you do is get 6th place in the summer split next year and qualify for the playoffs, you've got a chance at Worlds at that point. So you've got a long time to get past the ping go stage of Royal Club communication to something at least as good as Seraph's, if not better. And Curse, it's not the biggest organization anymore with kind of the split from Curse website, curse.com, all of that stuff, and Curse Esports, or now that split happens, it's not the biggest organization, but it's definitely big enough to find a translator buddy type to help Piglet learn English and develop that kind of synergy. You've got a long time, 6 months minimum, before you're competing in meaningful games in the summer split.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting because the counterpoint, Travis says, is Royal Club's a world-class team that has no communication. Meanwhile, in North America, we see a lot of people blaming on communication for their problems. And so I've always had the North American mindset that communication is important. Maybe I'm wrong. And I think that Piglet knowing no English would be a problem, kind of like how we've seen Seraph being a problem in CLG, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine the Summoning Insight interview with Royal Club where Thorne's going on about who's the shot caller, and he's like, well, who does the ping and who says go?
Yeah.
So what happens if, Insect pings and go and Uzi pings and go? What happens? And just this, nightmare morass of, pings and goes. Travis, I mean, are you concerned at all for integration and team synergy with all of that?
I don't know. I mean, that's for them to sort out. We've had barely a year of this stuff where it's everybody's kind of figuring out, is Seraph... nobody can argue that Seraph was a great situation for CLG this year. But, how much of that was Seraph not being a world-class player and how much of it was the communication? It's unclear. I mean, again, we just talked about World Club and they look okay. So I think Curse is just going to experiment. That's a team that's never been afraid to experiment. They were the first team to ever bring over a player internationally when they brought over Edward. So we'll see. I will say, by the way, that I would love, Piglet is, there are some times where, some of these players from Asia are a little, if they don't understand English that well, a little more reserved, a little bit more shy. And so from my job interviewing them or whatever, it's not always the most interesting thing, but Piglet is exactly the type, after interviewing him at All Stars, that I would love to see come to North America, talk about how much he wants to shit on Double Lift, and have it be fantastic, right? That would be great. So yeah, I say bring him to Curse and let him be let them join the NALCS. God bless.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the possibility. Not just because I called it. That obviously makes it better. But like, just excited. I think the nice part about the 3/5 rule is that there's a certain amount of experimentation, and we get a little glimpse of these kind of stars coming over and potentially changing these things. But at the same time, there's not so much that you have a full team come in the LNQ style. That probably is a little too much. So this seems like the perfect amount. Okay, so that's probably it, at least in prepared topics. So join us next week. Travis, you're on site this weekend doing interviews. Those will be up on ongamers.com. Hit the YouTube channel first and then circle back. Anything special you've got planned for this weekend?
Well, coverage. I don't know. I'm just really excited about. For those people that followed my coverage of the last set of groups, it was not necessarily what I had hoped to have whenever I went over there. The resources, I guess, were just a little bit low, and some of the stuff on the right side made it a little bit more complicated. But I'm hoping that now things have gotten in the groove. The other thing that'll be really nice is that there are considerably more Western teams in this set, and it's, everybody understands, I think, that it's a lot easier to interview people who speak English whenever you're an English interviewer than otherwise. So I'm expecting my content from this event to be a lot better. I also think the teams will be a lot more competitive and a lot more close. So I would just say, if anybody was a little bit disappointed, or maybe if you even weren't, expect that this set of games and groups and the coverage I'll be doing here will be hopefully considerably better. So looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to the games and everything starting tomorrow. Singapore seems cool, and I think that it'll be a great environment for some fantastic stuff.
Awesome. We'll follow all of our coverage here on ongamers.com, and we'll see you next week.